Good morning, everyone. Thank you and welcome. And thanks for joining us today for this webinar jointly from Ctrl AI and the Ombuds group. Over the next sort of 45 minutes or so, we're going to look at how Ctrl AI helps ombudsman schemes resolve disputes faster, fairer, and with complete regulatory auditability. We'll open up by talking about the role of AI in ombudsman schemes and how the Ombuds group experience partnering with Ctrl AI has been. We'll then also walk through a live demonstration of the platform, and then after that we'll open up to make sure that we've got a good bit of time for Q&A. So a quick introduction from today's speakers. So firstly, I'm joined by Judith Turner. Judith is the Deputy Chief Ombudsman of the Ombuds Group and currently Chair of the Ombudsman Association's Policy Network. A solicitor by background, Judith also sits on the Civil Justice Council's ADR Liaison Panel and is a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Also joined by Emily Hopkins, who's our product manager here at Ctrl AI, where she works with ombudsman and ADR schemes to translate complex operational requirements into structured platform capability. Emily previously held roles at Freshfields and Deloitte's, leading product management and transformation programs across legal and professional services. I'm Max Tressler, growth partner, leading our sales function over at Ctrl AI, and I'll be facilitating today's conversation. So before I hand over to Judith, let me take a couple of minutes just to give you a quick introduction to Ctrl AI for anyone that sort of isn't familiar with us today. So who are we as an organization? Ctrl AI is an agentic AI platform built specifically for the world of disputes and complaints. It's designed to help caseworkers handle cases faster, more consistently, and with a full audit trail behind every decision that's been made in the platform. Rather than being a generic AI tool, Ctrl AI is configured around your own scheme's rules, your terms of references and your case handling guidelines, so that the tool and the software and the AI reasons in the way that your scheme reasons. We work across a real variety of sectors today. So we're used across the legal space for use cases around employment disputes, personal injury claims, ADR work, through to corporate complaints teams using us at a high volume. And then focusing on today's conversation, we'll be really focusing around how ombudsman schemes are finding enormous value from the system itself. In terms of sort of how it fits into your existing operations, Ctrl AI, we really label ourselves as a system of action that sits on top of your system of record. So think of us almost as a workbench where the casework itself is completed, rather than a case management system that's sort of logging and recording that activity. So that means that Ctrl AI can integrate directly via APIs with a case management system, or it can run side of desk with no changes to your CMS at all. So there's really a route in to whatever stage your scheme's at. Ombudsman and ADR schemes are turning to Ctrl AI because it takes the manual, repetitive work out of caseworkers today. Things like flagging out-of-remit cases, or intaking and building case chronologies, and really keeping case handlers firmly in control of every output of a case. So really, with that context, I'll hand over to Judith, who's going to talk about the role of AI in ombudsman schemes more broadly, and Tog's own experience partnering with us so far. Over to you, Judith.
Thank you, Max. Yes, my name's Judith Turner, and I am Deputy Chief Ombudsman across a number of schemes that are run by the Ombuds Group. Two on the slides here: the Furniture and Home Improvement Ombudsman and Dispute Resolution Ombudsman, also the Independent Football Ombudsman, Removals Industry Ombudsman scheme as well. So a whole range of consumer goods and services and ADR covered by the schemes that we operate at the Ombuds Group. So I'm going to talk you through our journey so far and how we are approaching this in terms of our schemes, and also a little bit more academically, if you like, in terms of the access to justice and the important considerations around that. So I went into an AI tool and I asked the question about how I can complain about my sofa, wearing my furniture ombudsman hat here, if you like. And it gave me some information here around what might be the problem. Talked to me a little bit about evidence, and I summarized this in 3 screen grabs. So moving on to the next one. Very, very quickly, it is offering to give me an example complaint letter. So use that as a template if I'm the consumer. References the Consumer Rights Act there. And then the next page, again, gives me some more information about how to escalate. And you get to this information really quickly if anybody's ever done this across the schemes that you run. It references the Furniture and Home Improvement Ombudsman. It also, and I highlighted this, explains exactly what rights you have and can help you draft a stronger complaint. And I guess that's what we saw pretty early on in terms of how consumers were using AI to access our services. And for anybody that's been at the front line of complaints and seen how some of these then develop, it can give very long submissions for the Ombudsman to have to deal with. And consumers and their representatives are using this in order to make their lives easier, to do it very quickly. And also from an access to justice perspective, there is an important point here. I was in a conversation earlier on in the week where somebody was talking about how they asked consumers why they were using AI to access a particular scheme, and they said, well, actually we perceive that it gives us a more professional looking argument that's a little bit more like the one that we've got from the other side. So they're seeing that as a tool to almost redress the balance. So again, there's that inequality of arms argument that comes into it that we should be considering as ombudsmen in terms of how people are accessing our schemes. But that generating that large volume of information that we have to sift through can also be quite time consuming. So we've got a couple of things going on here. So what are the challenges then as we perceive them? We'll move on to the next slide to have a look at those. So as I've already begun to talk about, recognizing how service users, both consumers and traders in the sense of the furniture ombudsman, how are they using AI to access our services? And then from an ombudsman perspective, what's a proportionate response to that? What we need to get to grips with all of the issues, make sure that we're not missing anything. So how do we do that and make sure that we're responding proportionately to that? And then in terms of the outputs, when we do start to talk about integrating AI, how do we put appropriate safeguards around that to ensure trust, transparency, continued credibility, and reviewing that process? So I'll give you a couple of examples. So we've partnered with Ctrl AI via our existing case management platform, which is provided by Tizo. And we've got some important developments there that we can use to help our team, help the people who need to access our service. So as Max has already alluded to, this sits on top of our existing schemes. So we continue to control what goes into that. Some of the highlights here that you can see, it gives us some automated timeline of events that we can get to fairly quickly. Analysis of evidence that I'm sure Emily will be showing you as part of the demo. Identifying key themes and gaps which enables us to work through things more quickly, more smartly, and to support that decision making. So some of the things that the teams are using are the summaries and that evidence weighting and the chronologies. It also helps us label documents, because anybody, again, that's had experience of frontline case handling, where things are uploaded by the parties onto a case management system like ours, that can often be long lists of numbers as opposed to helpful headings and labels. So again, that's something that is the teams are finding really helpful as we start to integrate this. So we do have guardrails in place. Our ombudsmen are legally trained, so we have a minimum in terms of how we recruit. So they are interfacing with the tool in a way that plays into that sort of legal credential and the way that they are thinking. And the way that they as humans interact with the tool is also measured, so we can tell when things are being changed. We've got a back end that helps us support our teams, then support the end user. We are a telephone-led service, so none of that goes away. We pick up the phone and talk to people. So if they've given us a 14-page submission and we need to look at the summary, work out, review the summary, is that a good summary of what they've said? But we also test that by picking up the phone and having a chat with them. So all of that stays within our process, so that the consumers feel heard, feel that they've had the opportunity to speak to someone. But what it does do is get us there faster. So we are looking at improved speed of case handling, but getting us some time back to do that important thing that ombudsmen do in order to help those within our jurisdictions improve their services, give them feedback, generate recommendations through our case handling, provide advice, training and support, which ultimately then feeds back into the consumer journey and makes things easier for consumers from an access to justice perspective, but also from a customer service perspective. So feeding into that, we are developing AI policies that help us maintain that transparency and trust, make sure that we are using people's data as they would expect, responsibly and compliantly. We might have to remind service users that incredibly long submissions that go off topic and that maybe contain some hallucinations. I think we've all seen some examples of those as well, in terms of how service users interact with us, not necessarily helpful. I've seen one quite recently where the wrong case, a case that doesn't exist, was cited. Obviously, from an ombudsman perspective, we're quite forgiving of that. That's not going to be something that we ever take into account. But if their consumers are using that to access court processes, maybe then it becomes more of a problem. So hand in hand with what we're doing to help our ombudsman team do their job, we're also developing some service user prompts around how people can use AI to help them access our service. So we circle back round to that access to justice point, which I think is central to all of this, so that they'll have some guidance, some things that they shouldn't be asking, some things that might help them, again, put a submission in that gets them the best possible outcome in the best possible time. So I guess just to summarize that up, we are beginning to use AI. We're beginning to see the value and the benefits of doing that, but we're gearing that so that our service users do as well.
Thanks, Judith. That was, I think, some really useful context there on sort of where AI fits into the ombudsman landscape today and how our partnership between our two organisations has developed. So to make this a little bit more tangible for everyone, Emily's going to take us into the Ctrl AI platform now focusing on sort of the features that are most valued by Ombudsman clients today. So Emily, over to you.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, Judith. Hopefully you can all see my screen here. So this is the Control Disputes homepage. As Judith mentioned before, we can operate via an API into your existing case management system. We can also operate completely side of desk. So if you don't have a case management system, or if you are uncomfortable with sort of APIing into that existing platform, you can use all of the functionality that I'm going to show you completely outside of that. In here, you can see I've got 2 cases that are live. In order to upload a case, you can drag and drop the documents in that are relevant to the case, or you can directly upload them. So if I show you in here, we have the option to drag your files in and drag your evidence in. In order to run a case, we need sort of a case outline, so something that gives sort of a overview of what the case is. Usually this is the initial complaint or application document submitted by the consumer. Then we have space for the claimant evidence, the defendant evidence, and any third-party evidence as well. So you're able to upload documents from each side and also any sort of neutral party documents. If I head into our first complaint here, when you upload the documents, the AI will process every single document that's been uploaded, and then it will process the case as a whole. And you will get 3 things after that first process. You'll get this case overview, you will get the evidence, and you will get a timeline. So in this overview, you can see here there's a little paragraph summary of what the claim is about. In this instance, it's a customer who's had issues with their smart meter. They're claiming compensation for that, and they're also claiming any overpayments to be refunded to them. You get some brief key points of what's happened in the case, and you also get some case-specific fields. So the case-specific fields are data points that a case handler is going to need to come back to over again. So consumer name, addresses, you might have the deadlock date in there, you could have reference numbers. These are all customizable to your requirements within your scheme. We also have the audit log, which is downloadable, and you can see every single action that has happened in the case, both the actions that I have done, and also when we run any assessments, you will also see that as well. So you can see any changes that are made within the platform, who's run that change, and then you've got that fully auditable log, so that if any issues arise later on, you can go back and get a full view of what happened in the case. The evidence is sorted into a table structure, and you get a few elements of analysis or summary of those evidence documents. The first thing you get is an AI-generated title. This doesn't change any of the file names. They're all stay as their original names, but this just gives you a quick title to describe what the document is about, so you can clearly look through and see what you've got. You'll also get a description, a little brief description for each document, a date or date range of that document, so you can see sort of when it's referring to, a categorization, and then it will give you a quick relevant score, a score for how far it supports the claimant's claim and how far it supports the defendant's claim. This isn't to be used to sort of make your final decisions, but it gives your case handlers a really quick view of what are the key documents here, which are the things that I need to look into, which are the things that might not be so relevant. You'll also see here there's a little triangle next to this document. All this is doing is it's highlighting that there is content issues within the document itself, that potentially either the AI hasn't been able to review that document properly, or there's something in there that the AI thinks the user should have a look at. So you will see here on the top of the document and also on each page where there is a concern, the users will be directed to that, so they can go and confirm that they're happy with the document. If they want to make any changes, they can add those in this notes section here, save that, and that will then feed into the full assessment of the content. You will also get a timeline when you initially upload all of the documents. All this is doing is it's looking through every single document, pulling out every event that it can find and listing that in chronological order. We are also able to find undated events. I think this case doesn't have any. No, but if you do have any undated events, they will come at the end of the timeline. So if there are things that have happened in the case that the AI can pull out, but it's not entirely sure when those things happen, you will still see that. It's very over-inclusive, but you just won't have a date associated. In this timeline, you can go in and you can check, cross-reference back to the original document. So all of these here are hyperlinks for you to go back to the evidence page. It will open the document and you can check that the date is correct. You can also sort the timeline, and you can search for items within the timeline. Again, just to make it a little bit easier for users to get the most out of that. The timeline is also exportable. So again, you can download it. Once you have reviewed all of these elements, you can run assessments on cases. So for ombudsman schemes, we have two sort of standard case assessments. One is the remit check, so the initial check that you would do at the start of the process to understand whether or not your ombudsman can even review the case. And then we have a full case assessment. So for this case, I'll just show you the output of the remit check. So in this instance, the customer has claimed for £11,000 of compensation. Under my imaginary ombudsman scheme, we can only deal with claims up to £10,000. So it's noted that the complaint is out of remit, and it's giving you the details of why that's out of remit. So what are the issues that are in this case that are making it out of remit? The case handler can do multiple things with this. First of all, they can just say, okay, happy with that answer, I'm going to verify this assessment, and then we're going to move on and we're going to not see the case. What they could also do is they could use this as an opportunity to speak to the customer and say, look, you're claiming for way too much compensation here. It's unrealistic. We're never going to be able to deal with that. If you reduce your compensation claim, we would be able to look at the case. If they did that and they decided that the customer decided that they wanted to change their case, we can actually edit this assessment and we can change it to in remit here. And that then will be able to allow the case handler to continue reviewing the case. All of this content in the assessments is editable, and all of those edits are logged within that audit log on the overview page. So you have full control over everything that's happening on the case. If I head back into our homepage and I go back into this case, so this case is an in remit case, as we can see here from the remit check. In this instance, the customer was on a 24-month fixed tariff, and they've now seen that a cheaper tariff is being offered to new customers, and they're claiming that that's unfair and they want compensation for that. So if I run the full case assessment on that case, we can see that the AI is able to do an analysis of those facts, and it will then compare them to the Ombudsman playbook or knowledge-based material. And the playbook will constitute everything that you would sort of give a case handler to train them up to be able to understand and resolve cases. So any guidance materials, any terms of reference that your Ombudsman uses when reviewing cases, and any rules on how much compensation you could offer, those sorts of things will build into the playbook so that when the AI is reviewing this case, it's not making a generic judgment, it's making the judgment that you would expect it to make. So here you can see I've got a summary of the claim, and then I've got a decision summary. So what we've done here is we've broken down the claim into the requisite issues, and we've provided a recommended outcome for those issues. In this instance, we know that a customer can't claim compensation because they agreed to this 24-month tariff. They were told at the start of that tariff that they wouldn't be able to change the tariff until the end, and the company has handled it as well as they could in the circumstances. All of this, again, is editable. So if you, as a case handler, think that potentially, even though maybe the pricing and refund claim is not upheld, but you actually think, you know, they didn't handle the complaint very well, so I'm going to uphold the complaint on that ground. Again, you can edit this, you can change all of that content, and then when you go into this section here, you can also edit all of the reasoning that the AI is giving for why it's come to that decision. So the case handler is always in control. In order for you to generate any documents off the back of an assessment, it has to be verified. If you go in and change any content in a previously verified assessment, it automatically unverifies, and you can no longer do anything until you verified that assessment again. So we're keeping those checks and balances in place and making sure that a human has confirmed that they are happy with everything in this assessment before we move on. When we want to generate an output off the back of that assessment, for example, a decision document or correspondence to the consumer to let them know how their case has gone, you can do that in this section here. I have verified that initial assessment, which means I can generate an ombudsman decision, and I'll show you what that looks like in the platform. So in the platform here, you've got a sample of the document. All of these text boxes are content produced by the AI. all of them are editable. So again, you can go in, you can change the wording, you can change the tone of voice if you want to make it sort of match what you want to say to the consumer. But prior to that, all of these documents are designed based on existing decisions. So we look at the decisions that your ombudsman is making. We extract from that what is the right tone of voice, what is the right legal language that should be used, how much detail do you give when you're making a decision, how do you address evidence points and things like that. We feed that all in so that hopefully this should be a really good first draft that you will make minimal changes to when you are ready to export it. You can go in, you can edit all of this. Once you're happy with it, you can download that document. We can download them as Word documents. We can download them as PDFs, depending on what your requirements are. And then you can share that on to the consumer. If you are using an API into your existing case management system, this process will happen automatically. So any outputs that are generated can be shared back into your case management platform. So you've still got that single source of record in there. The final thing I'll show you is some of our reporting functionality. So the benefit of having a platform where all of your cases are run and all of your decisions are tracked is that you can see trends and insights into your decision making. So here we've got a quick overview of how many cases we're running, how long is it taking us to resolve those cases, how often are users overriding the AI suggested outcomes, which would suggest that either users aren't applying the playbook guidance, the knowledge base properly, or perhaps there's something in there that has changed or is wrong or should be updated to reflect new circumstances. You can also see in here trends and insights. So in this platform, I have a variety of different disputes, and you can see that there are concerns that are being raised based on the number of changes that the users are making to those assessments. You're able to pull out really insightful reporting here and trend analysis because we have all of that information about what has happened on a case all in the back end of the platform. So without seeing anything that's super confidential, you can disaggregate that and create this dashboard that will allow you to then influence future decision making and changes that you might want to make either to your playbooks or training that you might want to give to your case handlers to ensure that they are applying everything correctly. And that is a whistle-stop tour of control disputes. Obviously, we had to do quite a short demo there. So if you do have any questions, do let us know. We're happy to answer those now.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emily. I think that gives everyone a really good sense of how the platform works day to day and just sort of how you can cut that time spent per case and ground those answers in your scheme rules. So really that now brings us on to the Q&A. There's some details to enter questions up on the screen available. And we've already got one question in the chat. So let's start with that one, which is not all dispute resolution officers and complaint handlers are solicitors, with many having a mediation qualification. Is Ctrl AI reliant on case handlers being a qualified solicitor?
No, definitely not. We have the playbook and the knowledge base content to allow for you to have sort of anyone that you think is appropriate to be reviewing cases. We always make sure that we have those guardrails around the decision making, but ultimately it's the organization's decision as to how they want to implement the platform and who they want to be doing those reviews. We can also implement a variety of permission structures as well. So you might want to have your junior case handlers who may not be qualified doing the initial review and then passing that on to someone more senior to sign off. That's also an option within the platform. But from our perspective, the approach, the way that we make sure that the case handlers are equipped to review the cases is by having that playbook content in there.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emily. Another question that I wanted to ask, which comes up in nearly every conversation that I'm having with an ombudsman at the moment, is really around sort of what the nuances and differences are of Ctrl AI versus a ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and sort of that question that says, can't we just use Copilot for this?
Yeah, I'd say the difference is the control that you have over the answers that you're getting back. Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, they're all great tools and really useful, but depending on the user and the questions that they are asking, how they are asking them, you are likely to get very different responses back. You also have very little control over tracking and understanding insights. If you have everyone using an individual Copilot license, you as an organization can't be sure how their processes are being used and whether or not they're being used correctly. By implementing it through Ctrl AI, you've got the auditability within the platform, so you can see exactly what has happened. You've got the reporting and insights, so you have control over how decisions are being made, and you also have the guardrails that you build in through that knowledge base and playbook content, which means that you're in control of how the AI is being used and making its decisions.
Yeah, I think just to add to that as well, if I may, I think having it on top of the case management system and integrated within it, it is a really helpful tool. And just to kind of back up there what Emily's saying in terms of the reporting and what you can then get out of the data as a result of that, and also understand that the way in which your case handlers are using it and be able to track and measure that, but also, you know, if you're making decisions that constantly depart from your own playbooks, to be able to recognize that and address that. You know, we have a compensation framework, but we're not making compensation awards in conjunction with that. So what do we need to change there? What do we need to go and look at as a scheme? And I think that's really, really helpful in terms of the whole big picture rather than the individual cases.
Brilliant. Another question that's come in is about whether you can ask the platform to interrogate specific documents and ask it for any specific information from said documents.
Yeah, so we don't currently have a Q&A or a chat function within the platform. It's something that's on our roadmap to be able to do that. But when you build in sort of your playbook content or your, the information that you want to get out of the evidence when you are reviewing it, we can build that in and design an assessment around that. So, for example, if you do want to do like a gap analysis, or you want to understand if certain, actions have been taken in order to justify whether or not the claim can be brought, we can build that into an assessment that you can then run on the platform. But sort of we're looking into that sort of interrogation of the documents using sort of a chat functionality that you can ask it questions directly.
Brilliant. Quite a long question in here, and I think this is probably going to be one for you, Judith. It might be an interesting one. So it says that if this organization used Ctrl AI to assist with their complaints, they are not a legally binding ADR, so they can't enforce a decision, and a consumer would still have the option to take the complaint to the dispute resolution ombudsman. So hopefully this is an organization you already know well. When it goes to DRO, would you have, because you're also using Ctrl AI, if both sides of the table were using Ctrl AI, would this give the consumer the exact same response twice? And would that lead to frustration of the consumer?
It's a really good question. I think at the moment, when we agree with another answer that's already been given, or we agree with the trader, that does cause that's an existing phenomenon that that will frustrate the consumer. At the moment, I had a really interesting case study just the other week where a trader came to me and complained that two ombudsmen had made conflicting, what they thought were conflicting decisions based on the same set of facts. So one had been signed off by myself, and one had been signed off by our new senior ombudsman, and different decisions had been made by different human beings considering similar facts or the same set of facts, but looking at them through slightly different lenses. So we put both cases in through the AI tool to see what that would generate, and they agreed with. They gave lots of different considerations that still could have, as Emily showed, it's all editable, could have still let that caseworker come form their own view on it. So I think you've always got that element of that human interaction. It doesn't take that away. So if we agree with you, we agree with you. That doesn't change. If we disagree with you, we disagree with you, and that won't change either, because you've always got that individual looking at it. And for me, then it's about how that decision is justified and articulated. So we just get there faster. We've still got all the same considerations. Yes, we are looking at this from a consistency lens, but it's an unregulated it's an unregulated scheme, just as the one that you operate. So I think that there's still going to be that human element of consideration and justification that we'll get to.
And I think, just to emphasize on Judith's point there, the cases that I showed in the platform were very clear cut. They were clearly not upheld. But where there are grey areas, the platform is really good at identifying that and giving the user options. So, for example, you might have a claim that, yes, it's valid, but it's unclear as to whether or not, the customer suffered serious harm or, minor harm. The tool will give you the option. It will reason both of those points. It will explain which pieces of evidence it's used to justify each decision, and then the case handler can decide what they want to do on those facts. And that allows for those circumstances where you can have a really, really similar set of facts, but there's a slight nuance of, one person's been affected slightly more by the issue, or there's a slight difference in the case that justifies making a different decision. And so what we've tried to do is make sure that the AI isn't really, really determinative, unless it's, super clear cut what the right decision should be.
Brilliant, thanks. I think we've got time for one or two more questions. And the next question is really about integrations, and it says, to what extent is the level of support provided by Ctrl AI to organizations that wish to integrate their system via an API? Is Tizo the only platform that's currently set up to integrate with Ctrl AI? And if I may, I'll just open that question up a little bit more. And really, I'll start with you, Emily, if that's okay, to sort of ask, what does a typical implementation look like?
Yeah, so we can implement in a variety of ways. As we've said, we can do it via an API, or we do it side of desk. What we tend to recommend is that if we don't already have an API into your system, and we have APIs into a few, but not all, we would say start by doing it side of desk and see if the value is there for your organization. In order to implement, what we do is we work with you to understand what your case assessment requirements are. We'll get some sample cases from you that we can test into the platform. And then there's sort of a 4 to 6 week implementation process where we check those assessments are working correctly. We run them past you, and then we just give you access to the tool to start rolling it out for a small number of users, for a small number of cases, to ensure that you're able to see the value in that. When it comes to integrations, we're super API agnostic. We will integrate with any case management system that will have us. We're integrated with Tizo, WorkPro, and we also integrate with a few legal case management systems. Integrations can take time, and I think there's always an element of you've got two systems trying to integrate with each other. It's not always a direct conversation between us and our customer. Sometimes we have to work with a third party to sort that integration out. We're happy to do it, and we see the value in getting those integrations in. It does make things easier for your case handlers, but what we recommend is sort of, instead of going straight for that full implementation plus integration, do the POC side of desk, get your hands on the platform, see if you can see the value out of it, and then we can move forward with a full integration.
And shall I just add on to that, just from our perspective? Obviously, we have partnered with Tizo for a number of years, and it's a case management system that is designed by Ombudsman for Ombudsman. So I think in terms of the outputs and the results that we get from that, that's something that does form the basis of the capabilities that we've been able to get to quite quickly.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think we've got time for just one last question, and this is probably one for you, Judith. And it's one that seems to be asked more and more so, around not just how we should be using new tools, but why we should be using new tools. And it's really about how can AI be used to increase access to justice?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question at the moment, in terms of the ADR piece and the backlogs that are within the court system, and I think that the easier it is for people to complain in the first instance to the trader or organisation that they're complaining about, to get a good response from them. But also have the wherewithal to escalate and to escalate easily, it is really important, and you know that can be done in a timely way, but also then from the ADR provider's perspective, being able to respond quickly and well, and then to be able to provide the feedback to the trader or the organisation. Then you're constantly in a feedback loop that improves not only access to justice, but improves you know that sort of interaction in the first instance. They say, don't they, that an ombudsman is a self-defeating model, and that actually it supports the sector that whose disputes it looks into, so that the sector then can improve things for their customer or the person that's using their services. So from that perspective, this is a part of that ecosystem, and I think that you know it's looking at producing really good results that will benefit that end user, and I think that's really important.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, I think that's about all the time that we've got this morning to answer those questions. If you do want to get in touch for any questions that we've not been able to follow up with, please do get in touch. So that really brings things to a close here. So thank you very much to both Judith and for Emily for that sort of really good discussion that we've had today. And thank you for your contribution individually to everyone and your questions that you've brought. So what we're going to do is make sure that a recording of this session is available afterwards. If there's anything that you'd like to revisit, or if you want to share any of this discussion with colleagues, you've got the ability to do so. And if you'd like to see Ctrl AI in action with your own data, or want to sort of continue speaking with us, please get in touch. And we've got a QR code up on the screen there that will take you straight for the ability to get in touch. So thank you very much, everyone. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.